Welcome to M&A Access, the official podcast of the Alliance of M&A Advisors. My name is Gina Gallutia, and today we are here with John Cohan from Gesmer Updegrove. Yes. That's a mouthful.
It is. Comes off the tongue. The more you say it, the better it is.
I can see that. How long until you were fluent in the firm name?
About 10 minutes.
Okay, so way better than me.
I've known Andy Updegrove, and I've known the firm for a lot of years before I joined it. So
that makes sense.
It was easy to say.
How long have you been there?
Going on 4 years now.
Did you say 4?
4, yeah.
Okay. At first I heard 40, and I was like,
it's funny you say that. This is the 40th anniversary of the firm this year, which is a really nice celebration.
That is very
We're really
cool.
happy about it.
What are you guys doing to acknowledge it?
So a bunch of things. You'll notice that we put together a logo.
I did notice that. Maybe that's why I had 40 in my head.
Yeah, could be. And we're doing various things throughout the year. We've got we're going to be participating in the sailing regatta in Boston Harbor coming up next month.
Are you going to dump any tea in the harbor?
I doubt it. I don't want to get be put in jail.
A little symbolic, just a little.
Yeah, maybe a little dash. Yeah, right. Exactly.
That'd be great. Very American of you.
Yeah, totally.
Especially
Very patriotic.
On the 250th anniversary.
I know. That's part of the whole regatta.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's going to be neat.
I expect to see pictures.
Yeah.
That'll be awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've been there for 4 years.
Yep, going on 4 years.
And where did you come from?
So I started my career in big law. I started at Bingham Dana, which is now Morgan Lewis, and then made a few zigzags, a couple different firms. Then went in-house for about 5 years as general counsel, sort of COO of a life sciences startup that was there for about
life science.
Yeah,
startup?
It was life science tech. Sort of on the tech side of things.
Okay, I need more context
Yeah,
that
so
sounds like one of my child's dreams.
Well, I mean, it was a company that repurposed a lot of Polaroid film and a lot of Polaroid effects into what I call quality of life type of areas of interest, I guess. So one of them was in the tattoo world, where you would apply a tattoo like normal, but the ink that was used was such that if you ran a laser over it, it would render it colorless in your skin, giving the ability to change tattoos, get rid of a tattoo without the kind of skin sandblasting that would normally take place.
That's genius.
Yeah, it was kind of neat. So they were working that, continued to work that. Then there was a bunch of other business lines like cool paint, paint that would absorb or reflect heat. So for buildings, it was a kind of a nice coup.
That is very cool.
And we had a lighting division where we were, natural light, depending on the plant's dormancy and its life cycle, kind of how that would work.
So what was your role in all of that?
And you'll have to edit that out, me coughing. But so I was general counsel of all the lines of businesses.
Oh,
There
wow.
was about 7 or 8 lines of businesses, and I was GC at the parent. So
What kind of work did you have to do as GC?
So, good question. I became an employment lawyer, like overnight.
Oh.
So, tons of employment work.
Okay.
Just because, there were scientists, there were, the younger generation that was working there. So it was getting used to that environment. It was during COVID, so having to understand and navigate all of that during COVID was pretty challenging.
I bet that was.
Yeah. So I had to understand day to day how the regs were changing for employees. We had a lot of turnover just because it was a startup. Folks would come in, they would have certain expectations, they may not be met, so they'd leave, or we'd have to have them leave just because it wasn't a right fit. So a lot of that going on, a lot of strategic planning, capital raising, certainly.
Right.
Yeah.
I can see how all of that would be so helpful in your M&A practice.
Yeah, totally. I mean, because it's kind of the beginning stages of M&A, right? M&A is based on, generally speaking, you have 2 legacy companies, right, that want to either merge or you're buying one or selling one. And so, but getting to that point, I was sort of at that beginning stages of raising the capital, building the team, building out the strategy for companies, right, with hopes that we could break off certain ones
right,
and sell them separately if need be, right? That's the way the model was set up. So made kind of hopefully a clean break. And then all the IP was in one particular entity so that and we could license that out.
Smart.
Yeah. So,
very smart.
But yeah, it was definitely helpful for my M&A career because, it was, excuse me, it was, again, it was laying the groundwork for that exit to happen years out.
Right.
Now, it so happens that COVID was probably more than we could bear, and so the investors started to pull back, and so that it didn't go far enough. Right?
Not good timing.
Right, exactly. Mm-hmm. So,
which is the way sometimes, right?
100%. I mean, it's you can't really predict how things are going to go. I mean, you can always have some sort of projection, you have a plan, but you may not have the entire execution
right
all set and ready to go, right? Which is part of the attraction, right? Of excuse me, sorry, in the startup world, right? You have to expect those kinds of bumps in the roads, and
yep. Absolutely. Yeah. It's part of the gamble.
Part of the gamble.
Some of the fun,
part of
some
the,
of
part
the
of the
adventure.
Risk, but which is why, generally speaking, the reward is so high.
Right.
But you got to measure it against the risk.
It's true.
I think M&A is, from that perspective, is a little less risky because, at least in an M&A transaction, you have a pretty well-defined term sheet. At some point, the parties have a meeting of the minds, and then they're pushing forward, and they know they want to get to some result sooner rather than later, right? Somewhere in the 90 to 120 day time frame, not 3 to 5 to 10 year time frame.
Right. So
there's a big difference there.
There is. And is it a back to M&A, or have you only been working in M&A for 4 years?
I'd say it's a back to M&A.
Okay.
I mean, my practice initially has always been capital raising and M&A. So I kind of stand on both ends of the spectrum. So it was really, and in my practice before I went in-house was probably 60% financing and 40% M&A, right?
Okay.
And it kind of has always been in that neighborhood, right? But it's now starting to move more into the M&A space. It's probably flipped, really.
Right.
I think it's like 30-70 now. 30 financing, 70% M&A.
So you went from big corporate, right, to Gessmer's, would you say boutique or more family?
I'd say, probably
like
mid-size. I went from very, very big. But when I was at Gessmer, or being at Gessmer, it's kind of a continuation of the mid-range firms that I was in prior to going in-house.
Gotcha.
I wasn't always Big Law. I started out in Big Law, then kind of went into the mid-range.
What are the pros and cons of Big Law versus?
Yeah, I mean, with Big Law, for me at least, the training is superb, right? You're going to get really well trained because they have the resources, the ability to do that, the pad to be able to absorb, if you will.
Right.
The lost leaders, and so you'd be able to train the associates to make a really good investment in them, and then you get them up the ladder. Mid-size doesn't necessarily have that level of resource, but on the same token, a mid-size like Gessmer, we're not looking to hire, first-year associates. It just doesn't fit the model, right? We're looking for attorneys that can hit the ground running, maybe already have a practice under their belt or some modicum of a practice under their belt, so that, again, they can hit the ground and keep going seamlessly, if you will.
Right.
Now, that's not to say we don't have associates at Gessmer. We do have senior counsel, senior associates, but they've got some legacy experience. They understand how deals work.
They're not fresh.
They're not fresh out. Have never seen a deal before,
right.
Which can be a handicap, right? For especially a firm our size. There's about 30 lawyers. All of us somewhat specialized, but also generalized, right? And it's kind of a go-go atmosphere where you may not necessarily have time to switch from sixth gear to first gear.
Absolutely.
Especially in the middle of a transaction that's time sensitive.
It is.
Expectations are high.
Right. So speaking of training up, you have, I would say, some solid education prowess or practice or passion?
Yeah.
All of the above?
All the above.
You teach at Boston?
BU, Boston University Law School.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you teach?
Contract drafting. So, again, it's sort of the training aspect, right? It's taking a law student that has no idea what a stock transaction is, what an asset, an asset sale, stock sale, a merger, kind of what that looks like. They may have been introduced to it in one or two of their courses at a lower level, but I've never, and that's more of an abstract kind of doctrinal introduction, but nothing practical, right?
Right, nothing gritty.
Nothing. Yeah, exactly. Nothing that is kind of a skills course on how you approach it. So it's a very interesting approach, and students at first are kind of deer in headlights because they're not used to that, the way that that's conducted, right? I'm very kind of one-on-one, hands-on, and their other courses aren't like that. They're very much larger auditorium style, probably, that they're used to. And they go through the semester, and they don't know until the end how they've done, because they get, the overall test at the end. For me, there's a lot more feedback along the way. Mm-hmm. They're actually rolling their sleeves up, I should say, and drafting, like, almost out of the gate.
That's so good.
Yeah, I mean, when I say out of the gate, I'm probably lecturing the first couple of classes to give them the groundwork, but I want to get them in quickly, just so they understand not only how you draft, but sort of how the deal works, right?
Right.
How you get from initial discussions to closing, and what that looks like. So throughout the course, as I'm teaching drafting, I'm also teaching the M&A kind of way that it works, the rules of the road, if you will, that you may not know unless you get in it. Okay? And so trying to give them that preview, I think they find it really helpful.
Preps them a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. Now, the other thing is I tell them, when you first get out, you won't be drafting this kind of stuff. You'll be doing the lower level stuff, but at least you understand the generic sort of, or the germane part of the deal and how that works, and how it should work, right? Big picture, small picture. Kind of.
As an instructor, what are the top takeaways that aren't necessarily how to draft the contract and the mechanics of it, but those top takeaways that prepare them for a deal?
Yeah, so probably the major takeaway is attention to detail. They're amazed. Not only am I amazed, but they're amazed at how you have to retrain your brain. Because in these days, right, everything is go,
so
communicate
true.
quick,
Yep.
texting and, kind of abbreviating things when you're talking. Now I've got to bring them back into, no, you've got to actually read every line of this document. And digest it and understand it.
Yes.
And realize where the mistakes are. Your mind starts to play tricks on you.
Yes.
When you look at something and then you take it, and you put it away and take it back a few hours later and relook at it, and you're like, well, how did I miss that? And I tell them that at the beginning of the semester, and they don't believe me. They're like, yeah. And then when I give them their first assignment and I get it back, and my comments are, did you proofread this? Was this proofread? Because I'm looking at missing periods, you start the sentence without the first letter capitalized.
Right.
Or, it's just basic things that are missing that you don't need to go to law school for, but it's like 8th grade English. But in the rush, in the intensity, and the pressure of trying to get something done, you tend to ignore that stuff, and I'll get to that later, but then you never get back to it. And so what I tell them is the message that you're sending to the client, if they get a document that has typos,
trust is gone.
The trust goes away quickly. You lose credibility. So right away they say, if that's an issue, what else is? If that's missing, what else is missing? And so right away you've lost kind of at the gate. So that is, I really bear down hard on that, because that's a skill you need to master, even before you get to the real kind of nitty-gritty on drafting, right? So that's a major one. That's a major takeaway, I think. The other is don't be afraid to ask for help, because you're going to need it, and you shouldn't try to go it alone, because you really can't BS your way through this stuff. I mean, you got to know, and it's got to be the right answer, the right approach, and you have to be thinking. And that's the other thing I tell them. You got to think. don't just be a processor. You want to think about what you're doing. Put some real intelligence into it, because that's what your clients are expecting from you. And
it's why you exist for them.
That's why you exist. I mean, you're not just a scrivener. You're not a writer. You are...
Such a good word. Well done.
Yeah, right? So and that comes from law school, that word. But
for me, it comes from reading, like, Tolkien.
Right, yeah, there you go. It's kind of like the monks were scriveners back in the beginning of time kind of thing. So, but yeah, you're more than that. You're an advisor, right? You eventually want your clients to look at you as not just the legal advisor, but the business advisor. Sometimes you're the psychiatrist. Sometimes you're the therapist. You're the accountant. You're the business person. You name it, right? That's what you want. You want to be indispensable to your client.
Absolutely.
Right. But if you're missing the small stuff, you're losing from the beginning. And that's not helpful.
Would you say that throughout your career, after having multiple deals under your belt, that takeaway of don't be afraid to ask for help still remains true?
100%. I mean, look, I've been doing this for now 30 years. I don't know everything, right? I'm continuing to learn. And sometimes I learn from the younger students and younger associates on things that I might have missed or things that I didn't think of, right? And I always know that even when I graduated law school, I know that I'm always learning. I'm continuing. It's a continuum, right? That's why they call it a practice. You're continuing to evolve. You're continuing to learn every day. And I also found that by teaching, I've learned more.
So much.
I was amazed by some of the things that I've uncovered when I'm teaching, oh, that's why we say it this way, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right?
You have to think about it in a whole different way to explain it.
Yeah, you do.
You have to understand the why and the what and the how and the so what,
Yeah, and so it becomes this, I've drilled down several levels into, why is it this way and where did this come from and, why was this drafted this particular way? Which brings me to another point, which is, students tend to rely, and practitioners tend to rely on templates themselves. And you have to be able to have enough courage and enough knowledge to be able to take a provision in a document and change it to the facts of your deal. Because just because it's in there originally doesn't mean that it needs to stay that way or that it's kind of set in stone.
I was going to ask that, how much of contracts are templatized and how much are they bespoke?
For the most part, I'd say a good percentage are templates, right? They're models, but they're just that. They're models, they're guides, they're starting points. But, as I try to convey that you don't just take that at face value. You've got to be able to adjust it sort of like a piece of clay that, you got this kind of outline or you got this foundation, but you got to mold it to the deal. And every deal's different. Facts are different.
Right. And apply new learnings.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's, all of that, right? So, and so we find that if we're able to walk through, at least at the student level, if I can walk through each provision to say why it's drafted this way and what's another way you'd look at it. And I try to do that with our, the younger associates too.
Right.
Even, and we do that kind of internally, no matter what our experience level is, because we're always learning. Right?
You should be.
Yeah, right, exactly. We're learning from each other. Right,
So speaking of learning from each other, you have been, you've helped us with our certification the last year or so.
Sure.
And then you've also been leading our AI table talks the last couple conferences.
Right.
How has your understanding of AI shifted from that first approach to now?
It's a good question. It's shifted probably pretty dramatically in that.
Has it shifted because of you learning more or because AI has constantly shifted as well?
Both.
Okay.
Right. So, as I tell people, we're building this plane and flying it at the same time, right? Which is exciting, but it's also
scary.
A risk level and a
Yes.
risk assessment there,
Yes.
right? I think my approach initially was more abstract. My thoughts were more abstract because we weren't yet really into it and doing it. But now that have a pretty good amount of experience, my whole team at Gesmer is starting to get more experience with it. We're starting to discover what's the best way to use this, what don't we want to do with it, and how can this evolve into something bigger and better. And, it's not just us controlling it. It's, the platforms that are being developed on an hourly basis, right? I mean, we're sitting here now, and they probably, the development is continuing to evolve as we sit here in AI. So trying to keep ahead of that.
And while we're sleeping.
Right, exactly. Exactly, right? So, but I think I've taken more of a practical, hands-on approach and understanding of AI rather than this is what it could look like or this is what might happen, right?
So what are your go-to tools or practices now?
So you mean at the platforms?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a few. Certainly ChatGPT is always, kind of the first go-to, for me at least. We also use Copilot, Microsoft Copilot.
I have to say, I used it for something new the other day, and I'd heard people complaining about Copilot, and so I hadn't tried it.
Right.
And then I was like, I'll give it a shot, and it was awesome.
So, yeah, it depends, right? It's like that lawyer answer.
Fair.
It depends on things. It's good. It's good for certain applications, right? Maybe for research, it could be pretty good. And then for kind of you're starting out with a document template, it might be good. But to really dig into like levels of nuances in drafting and documents, Claude is probably a better platform for that.
For sure.
And again, and each one of these platforms is getting more and more specialized because they're chasing each other. Right? But we're starting to find that depending on the application, whether it's litigation-based, whether it's transactional-based, whether it's IP, there might be different platforms that are better suited for the particular practice. I didn't realize that at the beginning, that would be a differentiator. Right? I thought, everybody would just continue to kind of vie for the same, feeding at the same trough, if you will. But now AI and the development of that is starting to specialize even more. So depending on what you're doing, you may have different platforms under the same roof, depending on what the applications are. That's interesting. And I'm following that pretty closely to see kind of who's in the lead in what particular area. Right.
What is your day-to-day with it nowadays?
It's probably more of I'm starting to use it more as a Google tool, I think, searching different things, both personally and professionally. Personally, I'm not, for my personal use, I'm not so worried about exactness or whether the product that it's giving me or the result that it's giving me needs to be vetted to the nth degree. Versus professionally, I do, right? Professionally, I need to understand that whatever I get back, I know I need to vet. And I also have to have some understanding of what I think is going to come back with. The difference between a Google search and using one of these platforms is the Google search gives you kind of static information back, right?
Right.
But it's up to you to kind of take that information and figure out how you apply it.
And how do you drill down?
Exactly, right? But with the AI platform, or any one of these platforms, they're not only giving the information, but then they're giving you an application, a suggestion on how to use it, where they think your head might be at, why you're asking.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so this is totally different. But I was so insulted when I was talking through like my workout regime and like my dietary, and it was like, tell me what you eat, and I said protein forward, and he was like, okay, does that mean you're avoiding carbs? And I was like, Chatty, that's rude. And
right,
like
exactly.
There's sometimes it assumes things about you.
It does, it really does. And it's, you remember that it's all based on probability of where it thinks your head is at, based on the information you feed it, and based on the searches you do, or based on kind of your data set. And it's looking at that and determining, okay, what what did Gina ask me 3 times ago or 3 sessions ago? And then using that like any other tool to build on more of the data. Now, there are profiles within platforms. Like, for example, in Copilot, you can go in and say, I'm a corporate lawyer in a mid-sized firm in Boston. My practice is M&A. These are the types of deals I'm doing. I want you to give me answers that are concise. I want it in plain English. I want you to cite the sources. I want you to tell me why you think what you're thinking. So you give it all of that instruction. And every time you enter, a prompt for it uses that backdrop, if you will, to give you the answer back.
More context,
exactly.
Which is helpful.
Yeah, it is helpful.
It
right?
is. It is.
You don't have to repeat that context every time. Now you can just go in and prompt it with hey, I'm looking for a recipe, or I'm looking for whatever, right? And it knows that backdrop, your personality, to answer you.
Right.
So me asking versus you asking could give two totally
Very
different answers.
Right. Yeah. So in your M&A practice, are you specialized in particular niche of company?
Not really. I mean, I think generally speaking, it's in the tech world, right? Because that's sort of the legacy of Gesmer Updegrove is we deal with the vast majority of our clients are tech clients. However, having said that, we are pretty industry agnostic. I've done everything from home appliance to retail, to brick and mortar, to software, to med tech, hardware, software, you name it. So, we don't turn away, whatever industry is coming to us. The one we probably don't really have a lot of expertise in, that is very nuanced and can be very esoteric, is biopharma. Right? That really requires, heavy PhDs in-house, being able to kind of walk the walk and talk the talk of that practice, which is extremely niched and requires those that have a good amount of foundational experience. And the model is different in that industry too, in a lot of different ways. So, but other than that, I think we're pretty much industry, like I said earlier, industry agnostic.
Yep. When you say tech, what's different about that when you approach a tech deal versus business services or manufacturing?
Yeah, good question. I mean, so business services, for example, is very, as it indicates, very service oriented.
Right.
Tech could be a mixture, a hybrid of things, right? So it could be the tech itself, and then the people that are involved in sort of, the key personnel, the key players that are involved tend to be, at least from my perspective, more entrepreneurial, more bootstrapped, tend to take, I won't say more risk, but different risks, because they're depending upon a product, a piece of tech. Whereas a service provider or a service company, they know what that service is. They've been probably doing it for some time. They have more familiarity. They may have more legacy to that. But I think on the tech, especially the earlier tech that evolves, that is something that, at least in my view, feels a little more risky, and might take more, from an M&A perspective, might take more integration later. Post-deal integration may be something that needs to be concentrated on more, because you have potentially a startup with a really meaningful piece of technology, whether it's software, hardware, IP, whatever, that is going to go into a potentially larger company, which may or may not have that same type of tech, or this may be a bolt-on for their tech.
Right.
And so how do you integrate those two with the personalities, with the different technology? To me, is a bit more involved, has layers to it that need to be thought about pre-deal, during the deal, and then post-deal.
Yeah, so that is where I want to go next. When you're drafting an LOI, Are you thinking of integration? Like, is there anything that, while you're thinking through those things, changes how you approach the documents?
Probably not the documents per se.
Okay.
The documents are, they're going to be pretty foundational. Mm-hmm. But I do think about the key holders, the principals, and what it's going to look like for them post-deal. Mm-hmm. And I try to coach them and counsel them at that stage how this is going to look later. For example, I deal with plenty of founders that have their own company, right? And now when they monetize the company and they transact the company, and they go to a bigger place where maybe they're going to be around for another year or two afterward. Psychologically, it's a different play. And so I'm thinking about that early on, and I'm coaching them, basically saying, are you ready to make that move? It's not going to be what it was or what it's been all this time when you make that jump, to the next level or to that next company. It's great in that it's your baby that you've evolved or you've helped grow up. Mm-hmm. But then sending that baby off into someone else's domain, while you're still going to have some involvement, you're not going to be the controlling
right.
voice.
It's so hard.
Like you've always been. So you're quote unquote working for somebody mm-hmm. now. And so that requires, in my view, coaching, making sure they understand, are they ready to do the deal? I've had a few deals in my career where that wasn't necessarily thought about or explained, or the client didn't really have a good understanding of that, almost until it was too late, or as the deal got, started to evolve and got more and more real for that founder, did they realize, oh, wait a minute, this is going to be a whole different aspect, a whole different life, something I'm not used to. And that can, if the expectations aren't appropriately aligned, that has the potential of ditching a deal, like 86ing a deal.
Yeah.
And I've had it happen a few times. So I'm really kind of sensitive to making sure at the outset mm-hmm. that the seller understands what's this going to look like come the next chapter, mm-hmm. or what's potentially going to look like come the next chapter.
I always kind of thought that was the role of like the sell-side investment bank, right?
It is, but again, if they can hear it, if they hear it from a different voice, through a different lens mm-hmm. or a different kind of perspective, then I'm not saying the investment bank is not doing that. They most likely are. But again, we all want to get the deal closed, right? You also have to think about everybody's got a different agenda too. I mean, your job is to not dissuade the deal. Your job is to get the deal done.
Right.
And that's exactly what they need to do as the investment banker. They're doing their job, right? They're pushing this forward. They're getting the problems out of the way. They're clearing the runway, if you will. Mm-hmm. When I'm talking to the client, I want to make sure they understand, really what they're getting into.
Right.
What this is going to be.
Right.
Good, bad, or ugly. Or good, bad, or indifferent. Mm-hmm. How this is going to play out. And again, are you ready to make this jump?
Right.
A lot of them are. A lot of them are ready. But there have been some that have been like, I didn't really think of it that way. I do want to consider this even further. Mm-hmm. And my job is to not only get the deal done, but make sure that the client is taken care of, and that
right.
It's not just about the deal, it's about their life, right? This is like a change for them. A life-changing event.
Huge, yeah.
Right? And you don't want them to look back and say, you never told me, or why didn't you tell me? I never want to be in that position. That's
for sure
not the ideal position to be in.
Speaking of collaborating with investment banks, how often do you experience friction between the way they think something should be structured and the way you think something should be structured?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's friction. I just think it's a different perspective. We're both looking at deals that we've done in the past mm-hmm. and using that experience to build on for the next one. But every deal has its own facts that it sits on. And so, again, much like a template, you have an outline of what you think the way it should be, but every fact can be different, and so the subjectiveness that you have to build into this, I may have, or the investment banker may have a closer view or a different view than I do, and so I want to make sure that we are, in fact, hitting all those touch points and making sure that we're not missing something. And so I wouldn't say it's friction. There's definitely been disagreement, but it's not a, hey, it's got to be a my way or highway kind of thing. It's a, how do we collaborate this thing to make sure that the client's getting the best out of both of us or the team of us, and if we're aligned, then the confidence on the client's part is going to be that much higher. But it can require discussion at the outset, making sure that the team is aligned.
Right. Do you have to do the same with the tax advisor too when you're thinking of the
Well, the great part about
the company or anything like that?
Well, the great part about, at least in my practice, so my tax partner Aaron is also our managing partner, but Aaron is very pro-deal. He understands that yes, tax is a part of the deal; it's a very integral part of the deal, but it doesn't necessarily fully control the deal and how it's going to work. He has a really good understanding, a keen understanding of that. He's very much like me, very much a deal advocate, but understands that there are certain areas that got to be addressed, and if they're not addressed correctly, what the outcome, the potential outcome later could be. And again, you don't want them to come back and say, why didn't we take this into account? Why am I paying that much more tax when I could have, it could have been a lot more efficient from a tax perspective had we taken this route, or if we took a left instead of a right kind of thing. Aaron is very good at sort of understanding how that's going to look post-deal and being able to explain it in a way that the client understands and get comfortable with. So,
that's cool.
Yeah, it's really, he's an excellent tax lawyer, but he's also he understands deals. And not many tax lawyers, at least in my experience, have the ability to kind of pull out of that vertical and then look over the silos to make sure that how does this fit into the deal overall? And is this, in fact, pushing it forward, or am I just a no person? Like, no, you can't do it this way. We got to figure out another way. And so it's figuring out how to get it done and working around it rather than just giving a stiff arm no.
Right.
So.
Right. I think that's one of the coolest things about M&A is the creativity and the collaboration.
Yeah, you're right. And the better the team, the better that team works together, I think the client is getting, dividends paid big time on that.
For sure.
Yeah. And, you also want to coach the client on that. Plenty of clients are like, the bigger the team, the more fees I'm paying.
Yes.
Right? But if you can explain it in such a way where, say, look, yes, there are fees, but those fees are well spent. You got to look at that as an investment in the trajectory of that deal and making sure you're getting the value out of it. Because, at the end of the day, the transactional expenses are probably some minor percentage of the overall deal size. But if you're focusing just on the transaction fees and getting very myopic about that, then you lose sight of the big picture and the huger value prop. And so I'm continually trying to point the compass in that direction with them. So
nice. Okay. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you're feeling is really important for the M&A community to be thinking about these days?
So, a couple of things. I guess if we get back to AI for a second, the landscape on almost every aspect of M&A is changing because of AI as a tool being on the scene, right? There's a lot of rote sort of activities or tasks that likely are going to be taking place, or the machine's going to take the place of the human in doing those things. So I think from an advisor point of view, us more experienced advisors have to convey, I think, onto the younger generation coming along. They may not be going through that, what I call the quagmire of stuff to get through, the grunt sort of stuff to get through that probably makes you a better advisor later.
Yeah.
But the machine's going to be doing that now. So how are we going to make sure that people are thinking at a higher level, a more strategic level? But before you can get there, before you can run, you got to be able to crawl. But if someone is taking the crawl away from you or is doing the crawling for you, how do you get to that running?
It's so true.
Right?
Because, well, take the analogy of crawling. Did you know that kids that go straight from nothing to walking have a harder time reading?
I didn't know that. So I don't find it hard to believe, but
right.
yeah.
Because it trains your brain,
right.
and it builds those neurons and
yes.
those connections, right? So that's something I've been thinking about a lot with AI is the reason I feel as though I can use it effectively is because I have done all those things. Like I have had to write the marketing, I have had to do
that's
the A/B
right.
testing,
so
I have
all
had
that
to
foundational
choose
knowledge.
the,
right.
the strategy and the theory behind it, and so I'm able to say to AI, "Hold on, what about this lever?"
Exactly.
Right.
You get to question or test it.
Yes.
Right.
Right. So for those folks that haven't, that kind of leap over
yes.
all those learnings, how do they acquire that?
That's a really good question. That's one I've been grappling with for a long time now because, as you said, if AI spits something out to you that you're like, that doesn't make any sense based on the legacy knowledge that I have
right.
and what I've been through over the last umpteen years of my career, you can better assess whether that makes sense or not. Someone that has never been through that doesn't have that ability. So in the legal world, how do we train a first-year associate to really be thinking like a fifth-year associate out of the gate? And how is that going to affect the deal? How is that going to make for a better, seamless migration of the deal happening, going from discussions of the client to the LOI to the next stage, to the document stage, to getting the deal done. All of that requires experience,
right.
knowledge, legacy knowledge. But if the machine's doing a lot of that work, where is that institutional knowledge coming from?
And that muscle memory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right?
Yeah.
Which, get into a whole different discussion about, we got to back up to the schools, the training. And they're going to have to figure out ways to train students that are beyond what they're doing now, beyond entry level, getting to a more strategic thought level. And that's going to take some time to be able to get through that, I think.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So, and I think that has a ripple effect on M&A deals, right? So the experience level, who's in the deal, whether or not there's that, I keep using the word legacy, that legacy level of knowledge and experience that you can bring to the table that helps your clients, that's able to advocate for deals and get them done in an efficient and quick manner, because that's what the client's looking for, right? It's all got to play together like an orchestra.
It is.
Right.
It is, for sure.
Right.
Anything else?
I think that's it.
Okay.
Sounds good. I think we covered a lot of ground.
We did.
Yeah.
We did.
Definitely.
For sure.
Right.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. This was great.
It was a lovely conversation, as always.
Absolutely.
As always.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great.
And thank you for joining us. We hope you tune in next time and enjoyed this show today. These kinds of conversations are happening all the time. We'd love for you to join in, whether it's through our monthly webinars, our biannual conferences, or our SEMA certification, and then we have our chapter events across the nation all year round. You can find out more at amaonline.com. Until then, see you next time.